On the build show today, custom front door install, all the steps. Now here's what we got, guys. We're actually at my house, and this is my brand new custom entry front door. This is a JELD-WEN model. They built it to all my specs, including some really cool options I'll tell you about in a little bit. But on this video, we're gonna be showing you all the steps to install an entry door correctly. Now, whether you're an entry door on a covered porch like this, or you've got a side door or another door, all these steps are gonna be pretty much the same with maybe some slight modifications. Today's video is sponsored by JELD-WEN. Let's get going. All right, guys, we're on the front porch of my house. This is where my front door is going to go. And you can see we've already started assembling the jamb right here. As I mentioned earlier, this is a front door that has two fixed side lights, and then the door is in the center. Now, the beauty of getting a custom door, especially a JELD-WEN custom door, is I worked with my architect to decide what I wanted, including custom height and width and all that, and then JELD-WEN built it for me. So really the first step in the process is gonna be assembling your jamb. Now, when they shipped it to me, they did a great job. Check out this amazing box system they put it in. Both of my side lights were in this box right here. This box has my front door. I haven't opened that yet. And then this box has all the jamb material in it. Now let's go back and take a look at the jamb first, and then we're gonna look at the rough opening. So the first thing you think about when you're installing a front door is how exposed are we? Again, this would be true with really any exterior door. In this case, I've got about a, I don't know, 10, 12 foot front porch. We're fairly deep. This door is not gonna see a lot of water, but it will see some incidental moisture, right, if we have a real blowing wind. But the other thing I wanna do is really make sure that this install is airtight. I'm building a very efficient house, and airtightness is super important to me. Now let's look at the jamb. This is a jamb that's actually a wood jamb. I believe this is mahogany is the species right here. So this is a true wood jamb. JELD-WEN's done a beautiful job of pre-finishing it. And even these details like the fluting, this was all designed by my architect. Now this is the metal sill, and these jambs that you see here in the head, they all came shipped flat packed. So the first step was assembling. That's pretty straightforward, I won't get into that. But the next step is to get your rough opening prepared. Now front doors, any exterior door, you want to treat those just like you would your windows and doors. Okay guys, now sill pans, the bottom of the door, this is a critical spot. When the rain and the wind blows against this door, especially if this was a more uncovered door, let's say, this is the spot that if we ever get some water, we want to make sure that water is going to run out. Now this is the sill of my door, and again, because I'm under massive cover, I'm not quite as worried about water down there. So I'm going to treat my sill on this door just like I treated my window sills on the house. In this case, I'm using Zip System sheathing. So I use zip tape on the bottom here. You also see I use their flexible tape in the corners. So these corners are nice and sealed. If I get any moisture behind that door, it's gonna run out. Now you're gonna see later after I set the door, I'm gonna back caulk the door to make sure that it runs out. But if you're not as certain about those details, you might consider using one of these, a pre-made sill. SureSill's a great brand that I've used a bunch, no affiliation with these guys, but this is gonna come in all kinds of different flavors and sizes. This is pre-sloped, it's plastic, so you won't have any rot issues, and it's got end dams on there, so any water that comes here is gonna wanna run to the outside. So that's a great option, suresill.com to learn more about those guys. But I use the Zip System sheathing. This zip tape that's lower went on first on the sill here, and then we put another zip tape on there just to make sure this went all the way in. And this is just the standard zip tape on this flat portion. Then when we got to the corner, we put the stretch tape on, and this is the same as if you were installing a window. This is a flexible tape that's gonna flex into that corner and flex up the jamb so that now this corner right here is fully sealed. That's flex tape right there and there. That's all off one piece. Then we ran the jambs, and you're gonna see we ran this piece first and then this piece. So now my corner, my sill, everything's protected and waterproofed. So if any water gets past that door jamb in the future, if that sealant fails on the door, we're good to go. I don't need to worry about that. But basically what I'm doing is I'm waterproofing my entire opening, not as much for water, but for air. You'll see that in a minute. Okay, the next step is we're gonna install the side lights. Let's get that started. Okay guys, so I actually mistakenly earlier said that the door was wood, but in fact, as you can see in this photo, the jambs are all mahogany, but the door and the two side lights that my guys are about to install, that's actually a fiberglass product, which is really cool. You know, you think about boats being made of fiberglass because they're totally impervious to water. They're not moving because of humidity. So JELD-WEN actually custom made these fiberglass doors and side lights with a mahogany jamb. And I mentioned this earlier, but this is all triple glazed glass too. So we've got really high insulation factors for this door. Now, once the jamb's completed, you can see we brought it back outside. So we're ready to drop it in the hole, and we're going to dry fit the side lights in first. Now you can see we're using some suction cups, really handy to use. The commercial guys use these all the time, but residential builders are not quite as familiar with these. Woods Power Grip is a brand that's been around for a long time. And I don't remember the model numbers here. I'll put a link in the description, but man, these are super handy, not very expensive. They last for decades, and man, are they handy when you're doing some glazing like this. So highly recommend you get a pair of those for an install. All right guys, so we got the jamb on the ground now. A couple things I want to make note of. Number one, really handy to have some suction cups if you're a carpenter who hasn't worked with those. So these are our two side lights. We're dry fitting first on the two side lights. Bill's gonna check for square here. So we're basically gonna put an X with a tape measure, make sure the measurements are exactly the same. And then after we've gotten it square and make sure that it is square, we're gonna pre-drill it. If you look at the instructions, they're gonna tell you to drill and screw these side lights in. But the other thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put a bead of sealant. There's a rabbet that these register into, and we're gonna want a bead of sealant on all four sides. Okay, so we're gonna end up screwing these two side lights in through the jambs, both on the outside and the inside. And you're gonna notice that Oswald's always pre-drilling wherever he does that. He's gonna use a countersink bit. He's gonna pre-drill that. Hey, one last thing I wanna mention on this jamb. This is a wood jamb, and it came painted from JELD-WEN on the end grain. That's good. If we get any incidental moisture down here, we don't want that end grain soaking it up. But just as a precautionary note, I'm gonna put a little bit more primer on this end grain, and I'm also gonna come up about 4 or 6 inches on the inside of this jamb that's bare wood. You can really use just about any type of paint, but this is just a latex-based primer sealer. That's gonna seal up the wood, make sure it doesn't soak up any moisture. Okay, so the next step then is to take that rabbet, which is on the inside, and we're dropping 2 high-quality beads of sealant in there. I'm using a DAP product. I'll put a link in the description of that. I actually can't remember the exact model number of that. But we're dropping that side light into the door jamb as if it was a swinging door, but in this case, there's no hinges. It's a fixed unit. That's why we've got the caulking in there for good air sealing. And then they're gonna screw it in as well. By the way, Apex came out with some really nice new lines of bits and driver bits that are kind of shielded to protect things. So that's what my guys are using here. That's a really cool product. But we're using some SPAC screws. We're also really cautious not to use too long of a screw. We want enough bite on there, but not too much bite. You probably want a minimum of 3 screws on all sides of the jamb, so both right, left, and both sides of the middle. And once they've got that, we're ready to lift that door into place. Now here's a tip on that door. When you tip it in, see those 2 pieces of plywood that have been screwed to the opening on the inside? Those are actually gonna mimic the depth of the sheetrock. Now in my case, I'm using 5/8 inch sheetrock on the inside of my house, but oftentimes you're gonna see 1/2 inch sheetrock. So put those plywood pieces in as a spacer so that you know when you push that window in, you basically make a stop block. And then when we put that door into the opening, it's gonna stop and register at that depth. Okay, now we brought it back out, we were test fitting it. And again, we're gonna put another bead of sealant at the bottom. Now this time I'm using Zip's Liquid Flash. The beauty of Liquid Flash in particular for this application is it's not only a caulking, but it's an adhesive at the same time. So it's gonna help glue down that bottom sill on the door. And then when we pop it into place, you could screw this door from the outside. You could also screw it on the inside. But I'm gonna do a little bit different of a method on this door that has 2 side lights because we don't have a traditional jamb to screw through like we did on those side lights. Instead, I'm gonna use that angle bracket that you see there. Now that's probably a Simpson product. I actually don't know who makes that, but you can find that at any home center. And we're gonna screw 3 of those brackets on. So low, medium, high, basically where you normally see hinges. We're gonna screw that into the jamb with some short screws. And then when the door gets popped into place, you're gonna see we're actually gonna screw that into the face of the jamb.
Now in hindsight, I did make one mistake. I would have liked to have routed out those into my jamb studs so that my drywall would have been flush. I didn't do that. I made a mistake. I would do it a little differently if I was to do this tomorrow rather than this day, but I made that error. You can get around that. The drywall guys will be able to fix it, and I'll get together with my drywall guy to talk about that. But the next step is Oswald's gonna screw this at the head. Now pause on this section right here for a second. What you can see here is he pre-drilled that again so that we have a nice flush screw head when we're done. Also notice the shims on the top. Those shims are vital because we don't want him screwing that in and bowing that top frame. We want those shims to give some solid backing for that jamb so that when that screw goes in, it tightens it up. Also notice where he placed that screw. He pulled that weather stripping back and placed that screw behind the weather stripping. So when the door's open, no one's ever gonna notice that screw being in there. And it also eliminates the need to touch it up or do any caulking or that sort of thing. Okay, so now at this point, the jamb is in place. It's time to set the front door. This is a beautiful front door. The guys at JELD-WEN did a great job. Again, I couldn't believe it was fiberglass. It was so well detailed and gorgeous. I thought it was a painted wood front door. It was so crisp and nice. But we're gonna actually set the front door now. We're using those Woods Power Grips cups again. We're gonna put the hinges on. We're gonna screw this door into place and just double check everything's working dimensionally well. And then it's time to move on to the final step. Okay guys, now that we've got that front door in, one last thing I want to mention, which is very specific to my house and my details. Now, if you came for just the front door install and that's all you're interested in on this video, you can skip this next portion. But for those of you that have been following the construction of my house, I did an insulated slab detail, and I wanted to mention that at my front door, I actually poured a concrete curb. That concrete curb at my front door means that my door, the curb itself, is 2 1/4 inches higher than my inside concrete, and of course higher than my porch concrete, because I wanted to lay my insulation and my 2 layers of subfloor such that my top layer of subfloor would come out and receive the door. Now here's what's happening. Here's what I did at my house. I used 1.5 inch thick Interra foam. That's a GPS foam made by Logix brand, Halo insulation. I did a detail where I used Siga tape around the perimeter of my bottom plate. That's that big wide green tape you're seeing there. That's for both air sealing and bug sealing in the exterior of my house. It also allowed me then to seal the top of the foam for vapor barrier reasons to that first layer of tape. And that's what I'm doing here, is I'm basically continuing that continuity of the top foil facing on that Interra to my vapor barrier on the outside. Then on top of that, I'm putting 1 layer of Advantech sheathing, and that's basically flush with the top of my curb. And you can see when I tape that curb, that tape is coming down and rolling down. That's because I've got about a 3/4 inch gap from the top of the foam to the top of the curb. So now when I put that first layer of Advantech down, it's gonna butt up with my concrete sill, or concrete curb, I should say. And next, that second layer is gonna roll out. Now that layer that rolls out allows me to really do a good job of air sealing, shimming, making everything kind of quote unquote normal when it comes to that door install. But if you're following these methods with a traditional basement house, let's say, these details you're not gonna use. I just wanted to clarify this for anybody watching this that has seen my other details on my house. Let's get back to the final step for this door install.
All right, so now that the door is in place, there's really kind of 2 final steps. You can see we set this door flush with the outside here, and so we taped this to get that final waterproofing and air sealing. We talked about this a little bit earlier though. Look how big my porch is. I've got this at least 10-foot deep front porch plus a 2-foot overhang. This door is really not gonna see any water. Very, very little moisture to this door. So this tape is really doing more air sealing than anything else, but you do wanna pay attention to this final step. And then I've got a casing that also came from JELD-WEN, more of a traditional brick mold, I should say, than casing. This will get installed as we start installing my James Hardie on the front porch, and that'll complete the look of my really, truly black custom front door. And then on the inside, there's really kind of 2 final steps. We're gonna run a bead of low expansion spray foam all the way inside of the door, in between the door jamb itself and the rough opening. And that's going to give us a little bit of extra insulation. Now you could stop there, and traditionally builders have over the years, but I like to go that extra step for air sealing. And that's why I'm going to show you two additional methods. Now Andrew's doing that right now. The first method is to use some European air sealing tapes. I'm a big fan of Siga and their products, and he's actually using Fentrum 20 right now. That's a really interesting product in that it's super sticky, very easy to apply, and then it's going to provide that final air seal on the inside of the house. But the other option that I've used a ton that I like also, that's a little bit easier when it comes to application, is to use a backer rod on that gap and then to use Proseco's Air Dam. Now it comes in a sausage tube. It's a little bit wonky compared to just a regular caulking. But the beauty of this product is it's going to move and flex and adjust with the humidity over the years, and it'll never crack. And it's going to provide both a backstop if there were any small amount of moisture to get through there, but more importantly, it's going to provide an air seal. And we want that complete on the entire backside. We want that at the sill, the jambs, and the head. So whichever method you do, that's really that final degree of completeness to really go the full meal deal. My house is going a little step further. I'm actually getting this house rated through the Passive House Institute US. So I'm making sure that my air sealing is absolutely perfect and critical. That's also the other reason why I specified this as a triple glazed glass here, to really get the maximum amount of insulation value out of this door. Guys, hopefully you learned something today. Big thanks to my friends JELD-WEN. I partnered with them on all my exterior windows and doors in this house. They really have some terrific products. If you haven't seen it, I made several videos on the install of the windows that I have here. I made a video comparing double versus triple glaze and which you might want to use. But no matter which product you choose, always install it in your best practice methods. Take the time to really put a sill pan in, to air seal and to waterproof correctly. If you do that, you're going to get decades out of great service from any one of the JELD-WEN products that you might choose. I'll put a link in the description to JELD-WEN if you want to learn more about them. But everything that we talked about today would work for really just about any manufacturer on an exterior door, a front door system like this. If you're not currently a subscriber, hit that subscribe button below. We've got new content here at The Build Show every Tuesday and every Friday. Follow me on Twitter or Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on The Build Show.